Welcome to Dark Diaries, a new horror audio experience. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know by subscribing and liking the video version. With that out of the way, let's begin. In the late 19th century, the Whitechapel district of London became a playground for fear, as a phantom-like figure emerged from the shadows, preying on the vulnerable, the destitute, and the forgotten. A figure so elusive, so diabolical, that he struck with surgical precision, leaving behind a trail of unspeakable horror. His reign of terror spanned a mere few months, but his malevolence sent shockwaves through Victorian society, casting a cloud of dread over every soul who dared to walk those wicked cobblestone streets. The Ripper, as he was aptly named, took delight in the grotesque, mutilating his victims with macabre expertise, as if he was conducting a terrifying symphony of death. But who was Jack the Ripper? The truth remains forever locked in mystery. Was he a doctor skilled in the art of anatomy, or a mere charlatan, reveling in the suffering he inflicted? London, a city known for its grandeur and sophistication, was consumed by panic as whispers of the Ripper's presence sent shivers down the spines of its inhabitants. The fear, like a silent epidemic, spread through the hearts and minds of the people, casting doubts on their neighbours, friends, and even loved ones. No one felt safe, for the Ripper's insidious presence lingered around every corner, in every dark alleyway. Prepare yourselves, for this is a tale that defies reason and ventures into the darkest recesses of the human psyche. Welcome to a place where fear reigns supreme and the nightmarish becomes reality. Welcome to Dark Diaries. Chapter 1. A Gathering Storm in the East End. In the mid-19th century, England found itself grappling with an inflow of Irish immigrants, seeking solace within the maze-like depths of its major cities, notably the infamous East End of London. Yet, this was not the sole surge. In a symphony of despair, Jewish refugees fleeing the horrors of slaughter that ravaged the Russian Empire and other corners of Europe join the growing tapestry of faces in the same darkened domain. Within the heart of the East End, in a parish named Whitechapel, an ominous transformation unfolded. Its streets, once relatively tranquil, now bore the weight of burgeoning populations, swollen to a staggering 80,000 inhabitants by the year 1888. A harrowing reality emerged as work and housing conditions plummeted into the depths of squalor, birthing an insidious underclass that the world chose to ignore. In this despair-ridden enclave, the children, the innocent souls burdened by circumstance, fell prey to a merciless fate. 55% of these young lives perished before reaching the age of 5. Robbery, violence, and the demons of alcoholism became daily companions, for poverty had sunk its fangs into the very fabric of existence. Desperation became a lethal dance partner, leading countless women down the path of survival, where prostitution was the tragic currency that paid their meagre wages. As the fog of October 1888 descended upon London, the Metropolitan Police Service would uncover a chilling truth. Within the labyrinthian streets of Whitechapel, amidst the crumbling facades and dimly lit alleys, they estimated the presence of 62 brothels and a staggering 1,200 women ensnared in the shadowy trade of prostitution. Each night, the confines of 233 common lodging houses harboured approximately 8,500 souls, seeking refuge from the unrelenting torment of destitution. The bleak economic struggles of Whitechapel served as the kindling for a firestorm of social tensions. Between the years 1886 and 1889, demonstrations invited the intervention of law enforcement and sowed the seeds of public unrest. Events such as the haunting Bloody Sunday of 1887 intensified the darkness that enveloped the district, amplifying the cries of disdain for those caught in the merciless grip of poverty. Whitechapel, once a thriving community, became a crucible for societal disorder. And then, as autumn creeped into the air, an unspeakable horror gripped the very soul of Whitechapel, itching its name in the archives of human depravity: Jack the Ripper. Vicious and grotesque, these murders defied comprehension, rattling the foundation of sanity. The world recoiled in abject horror, forever scarred by the name that would forever haunt its nightmares. Chapter 2: The Whitechapel Murders. The streets of the East End were gripped by an evil force, as a wave of attacks against women unleashed terror and uncertainty during this dark period. Between the 3rd of April 1888 and the 13th of February 1891, a total of 11 heinous murders were subject to a Metropolitan Police investigation, collectively known as the Whitechapel Murders. The very nature of these crimes shrouded them in mystery, leaving experts divided on whether they were all the work of the same sinister hand. Among these 11 cases, the canonical 5 stood out. These 5 murders were widely believed to be the gruesome work of the infamous Ripper. The vicious presence haunting the darkest corners of Whitechapel. His modus operandi left a nightmarish trail of deep slash wounds to the throats, followed by extensive mutilations to the abdominal and genital areas, the removal of internal organs, and progressively ghastly facial disfigurement. Yet, the police docket excluded the first 2 cases, those of Emma Elizabeth Smith and Martha Tabram, from the canonical 5. Smith's tragic fate occurred on the 3rd of April 1888, when she fell victim to a brutal attack in Osborne Street. Bludgeoned about the face with a cut to her ear, she was sexually assaulted, suffering internal injuries that led to her untimely death. Though the press linked this attack to the later Ripper murders, many experts attribute Smith's tragedy to general East End gang violence, unrelated to the Ripper's sinister plot. Tabram's murder unfolded on a haunting night in George Yard, Whitechapel, on the 7th of August 1888. The savagery of her demise was beyond comprehension, as she bore 39 stab wounds to various parts of her body. The attacker's cruelty knew no bounds, inflicting blade wounds to her throat, lungs, heart, liver, spleen, stomach, and abdomen. The proximity of Tabram's murder to the later canonical Ripper killings, along with its inexplicable motive, led the police to initially link the two. However, differences in the wound patterns distinguish her murder from the later canonical ones. Tabram's relentless stabbing contrasted with the throat and abdomen slash wounds characteristic of the Ripper's signature. The mystery deepened as experts grappled with the connections between these grisly events, trying to unveil the faceless monster behind the gruesome murders. But the shadows concealed more than they revealed, leaving the city trembling with fear, haunted by the lurking presence of a merciless killer. And as the body count grew, so did the darkness, painting a harrowing tale of unspeakable horror in the heart of Whitechapel. Chapter 3: The Canonical 5. Mary Ann Nichols. On Friday, the 31st of August, Mary Ann Nichols, an unfortunate soul met a gruesome fate in the narrow confines of Bucks Row, a back street now known as Durward Street. The sun had yet to rise when cart driver Charles Cross made a horrifying discovery at 3:45 a.m. There, lying on the cold ground before a gated stable entrance, was the body of Mary Ann Nichols. Her life had been brutally taken, leaving behind a scene of unspeakable dread. The darkness of the night was matched only by the darkness of the crime itself. Her throat had the mark of 2 sinister slits, etched from left to right, an eerie signature of the killer's intent. But the terror did not end there. Her abdomen, a canvas for a demented artist, had been savagely mutilated by a deep, jagged wound that flouted any kind of humanity. The grotesque image was a testament to the malevolence that walked among the unsuspecting residents of Whitechapel. The abdomen bore witness to several shallow incisions, a grim and twisted frenzy of the blade. Like strokes of madness, 3 or 4 similar cuts adorned the right side, a morbid tapestry woven by the same violent hand. As the chilling news spread, the investigators from the J or Bernthal Green Division of the Metropolitan Police descended upon the crime scene. The echoes of fear and suspicion reverberated through the narrow alleyways as the quest to unmask the fiend responsible began. But the dark threat of evil seemed to extend beyond the boundaries of the murder itself. On this very day, the resignation of James Monroe, the head of the Criminal Investigation Department, cast a foreboding shadow over the already perplexing case. Differences with Chief Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Charles Warren, added an ominous layer to the unfolding terror, as if unseen forces were at play, pulling the strings. As the night descended once again, the streets of Whitechapel became haunted by the ghostly presence of an elusive killer, lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike again. And with each passing moment, the city's heart grew heavier, burdened by the weight of fear and uncertainty, knowing that evil still roamed the streets, seeking its next victim in the bleak alleyways of London. Annie Chapman. Just 8 days after this murder, in the early hours of a grim Saturday, the 8th of September, terror descended upon the bleak streets of Spitalfields. The lifeless body of Annie Chapman was discovered near a doorway in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street. Her tragic fate had befallen her as she sought to earn money to pay her rent. The scene that greeted the terrified onlookers was beyond comprehension. Annie's throat had the mark of a malicious hand, a cruel and precise cut from left to right. But the depths of depravity didn't end there. Her abdomen had been viciously disemboweled, and her intestines laid callously scattered over each shoulder, like a grotesque offering. A chilling void now occupied her womb. Parts of her uterus was missing, removed with a surgical precision. Pathologist George Bagster Phillips was haunted by the disturbing conclusion that only a person with intimate anatomical knowledge could have committed such an atrocity. Wielding a blade of 6 to 8 inches in length to extract the reproductive organs in a single ghastly motion. However, skepticism arose, with other experts dismissing the idea of the murderer possessing such surgical skill. As the investigation unfolded, a sinister suspect named John Pizer, infamous as, quote, Leather Apron, came under police scrutiny. Known for terrorizing local prostitutes, he was arrested but ultimately released without charge, as his alibis for the recent murders were confirmed. Yet, the unsettling presence of the true murderer still loomed, casting an ominous shadow over Whitechapel. Witnesses stepped forward, each offering a glimpse into the last moments of Annie Chapman's life. Mrs. Elizabeth Long testified to seeing Annie conversing with a man in the vicinity of the backyard at around 5:30 a.m, the very location where her lifeless body would later be found. The description provided a chilling portrait of the potential killer. An aged figure, slightly taller than Annie, with a dark complexion and a foreign, shabby genteel appearance, donning a brown deerstalker hat and a dark overcoat. The atmosphere in London grew tense, panic spreading like a wildfire. A violent mob even attacked the Commercial Road police station, convinced that the murderer was held within its walls. Rumours of Jewish ritual killings incited anti-Semitic demonstrations, and a reward was offered for the capture of the elusive killer. Fear gripped the hearts of the residents, prompting the formation of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, chaired by George Lusk. Despite their efforts, the Metropolitan Police, under the Home Office's instruction, refused to offer a reward, fearing it could lead to false information. Amidst the echoes, the leadership of the investigation wavered, leaving a void of direction. Robert Anderson, head of the CID, took sick leave, and Superintendent Thomas Arnold also went on leave, leaving the overall direction of inquiries uncertain. In response, Chief Commissioner Sir Charles Warren appointed Chief Inspector Donald Swanson to coordinate the investigation from Scotland Yard. In a desperate attempt to unmask the culprit, a German hairdresser named Charles Ludwig was taken into custody on suspicion for the murders. However, his release soon followed, as another double murder revealed that the true evildoer still lurked in the shadows, eluding capture and shrouding the city in terror. Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes. As the chilling days of autumn descended upon Whitechapel, the horrors of Jack the Ripper continued to haunt the city. On Sunday, the 30th of September, the lifeless body of prostitute Elizabeth Stride was found in Dutsfield Yard, a grim gateway at 40 Burner Street. Her throat had been brutally slit from left to right, leaving her lying in a pool of blood. But unlike previous victims, her body remained unmutilated, raising questions of whether the killer had been interrupted before completing his grisly work. The possibility that Louis Daimschutz, who discovered the body, might have interrupted the murderer's dark ritual loomed in the minds of investigators. Yet, some believed Stride's murder to be disconnected from the others, citing the lack of mutilation and the location south of Whitechapel Road. The blade used in this instance was thought to be shorter and of a different design. Nevertheless, most experts found similarities, compelling enough to connect Stride's murder with at least 2 previous killings, including that of Catherine Eddowes, who would soon share a fateful night. Just 45 minutes after Stride's discovery at 1:45 a.m, PC Edward Watkins stumbled upon the mutilated body of Catherine Eddowes at Maya Square in the City of London. Only moments before, she had fallen victim to a savage slash to her throat from left to right, executed with a sharp, pointed knife at least 6 inches in length. The brutality didn't stop there. Her face and abdomen had the marks of a madman's fury. Her intestines were gruesomely drawn out over her right shoulder, and her left kidney and most of her uterus had been surgically removed, demonstrating a chilling knowledge of human anatomy. The investigation brought forth conflicting views from pathologists and witnesses. While some believed the killer possessed surgical skill and knowledge of organ placement, others disagreed, leaving the true nature of the murderer shrouded in darkness. As the list of victims grew, so did fear and frustration among the public. Criticisms of the police and the Home Secretary intensified as little progress seemed to be made. The city was gripped by terror, and rewards were offered for any information leading to the capture of the killer. A bizarre twist added to the growing dread when a blood-stained fragment of Eddowes' apron was found near Galston Street. Chalk writing on a nearby wall saying, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing," further fueled intrigue, with cryptic phrases possibly connected to the murderer. Commissioner Warren's decision to erase the message only deepened the mystery. The search for the Ripper saw unconventional methods, including the consideration of using bloodhounds. However, fears of the dogs being poisoned by criminals led to the abandonment of this pursuit. With countless interviews and detentions, the investigation seemed to yield few results. By mid-October, the head of the CID, Anderson, returned from leave to take charge of the investigation. Yet the elusive Ripper remained a step ahead, continuing his reign of terror, leaving the city gripped in fear and darkness. Mary Jane Kelly. On a cold Friday, the 9th of November, the East End of London witnessed another horrifying murder. Mary Jane Kelly, a prostitute, met her end in the confines of her single room at 13 Miller's Court, hidden behind 26 Dorset Street in Spitalfields. The ominous connection to previous victims deepened the terror, as Chapman had lived in Dorset Street and Eddowes was known to have sought shelter there on occasion. Mary Jane Kelly's mutilated body was discovered just after 10:45 a.m, lying lifeless on her bed. Dr. George Bagster Phillips, the first to arrive at the scene, believed that she had met her demise from a slash to the throat. However, the gruesome scene unfolded further, as her abdominal cavity had been brutally sliced open, and all her internal organs were spread throughout the room. Her breast was severed, her face bore the marks of monstrous cruelty, and her thighs partially sliced to the bone, with some muscles removed. Unlike the previous victims, Mary Jane Kelly was found undressed, clad only in a light nightie. Her clothes, neatly folded on a chair, appear to have been partially burned in the fireplace, possibly to provide light in the dimly lit room, illuminated only by a single candle. This gruesome murder stood apart, possibly due to the privacy of the room, which gave the killer ample time to unleash his savagery. The state of her undress and the carefully folded clothes raised chilling questions about her final moments. Some speculated that she undressed herself before lying on the bed, hinting at the possibility that she knew the killer, believed him to be a client, or was caught unaware while sleeping or intoxicated. The inquest into Mary Jane Kelly's death, presided over by Dr. Roderick MacDonald, MP, took place at Shoreditch Town Hall on the 12th of November. The emotional impact of this heinous crime was evident, as an enormous crowd of mourners gathered for her funeral on the 19th of November. The procession struggled through the gridlocked streets, attempting to make its way from Shoreditch Mortuary to the Roman Catholic Cemetery at Leytonstone, where she was laid to rest. Amid the horror, the resignation of Commissioner Charles Warren on the 8th of November added to the sense of chaos and uncertainty. The police surgeon, Thomas Bond, emphasised the similarities between the 5 murders, suggesting they were the work of the same sinister hand. As the city remained on the edge, a cabinet decision offered a pardon to any accomplice who came forward with information leading to the apprehension of the true murderer. Despite the efforts of 143 extra plainclothes policemen deployed in Whitechapel during November and December, the Whitechapel murderer remained elusive, shrouded in darkness, continuing to haunt the East End with his unspeakable atrocities. Chapter 4. The Letters. Throughout the blood-curdling saga of the Whitechapel murders, an eerie tide of correspondence flooded the police, newspapers, and individuals connected to the case. Countless letters poured in, ranging from well-meaning advice on how to apprehend the elusive killer to an overwhelmingly majority of hoaxes and utterly futile information. Amid this sea of correspondence, the most disturbing were the hundreds of letters claiming to be authored by the very hand that had stained the streets with blood. These sinister messages sought to instill fear and uncertainty, perpetuating the shadowy presence of the murderer, their contents leaving a haunting impression on the minds of all who read them. On the 25th of September, 1888, a letter arrived at the Central News Agency, its contents setting off tremors of fear. Postmarked on the 27th of September, the letter would soon find its way to Scotland Yard on the 29th. Initially dismissed as a hoax, its sinister nature would soon be unveiled.
Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police officers just for jolly. Would you keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight? My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind me giving the trade name. P.S. Wasn't good enough to post this before I got all the red ink off my hands, curse it. No luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now.
The world held its breath as the macabre prophecy seemed to find an eerie connection when Catherine Eddowes was discovered 3 days later. Her ear obliquely cut from her lifeless body. The mere mention of the gruesome threat caught the attention of authorities. Though Eddowes' ear may have inadvertently been nicked during the attack, the letter writer's promise to send the ears to the police remained unfulfilled. Nonetheless, the name Jack the Ripper, coined by the signatory of the letter, would forever be etched in infamy after its publication. The ominous identity now had a name, one that would echo through history, forever synonymous with terror and brutality. The Dear Boss letter's dark legacy lingered, inspiring subsequent letters from copycats who sought to mimic its sinister tone. Pseudonyms like George of the High Rip Gang and Jack Sheridan the Ripper emerged, adding to the sense of dread that enveloped the city. Amidst the labyrinth of letters that followed, a debate emerged regarding the true origin of the name Jack the Ripper. Some claimed that another letter dated the 17th of September 1888 held the first usage of the infamous moniker. Yet, experts believe this to be a modern forgery planted in police records in the 20th century, adding yet another layer of mystery to this mystifying case. On the 1st of October 1888, a postcard arrived at the Central News Agency.
I was not kidding, dear boss, when I gave you the tip. You'll hear about Saucy Jackie's work tomorrow. Double event this time. Number one squealed a bit, couldn't finish straight off. Had not the time to get ears for the police. Thanks for keeping the last letter back till I got to work again. Jack the Ripper.
Dubbed the Saucy Jackie postcard, its handwriting bore a striking resemblance to the infamous Dear Boss letter that had sent shockwaves through the city before. The chilling words etched on the postcard referenced the heinous double event that occurred on the 30th of September, alluding to the canonical murders that had left the city in a state of terror. The author's eerie knowledge of the crimes raised suspicions, with many questioning how a person could possess such intricate details of the ghastly deeds. The postcard's timing added to the enigma, as it was postmarked more than 24 hours after the killings had taken place. While some argued that this was unlikely for a member of the public to have such information, others believed that the details of the murders had already become common knowledge through journalists and the whispering gossip of Whitechapel's residents. On the 16th of October, 1888, an unsettling parcel arrived in the hands of George Lusk, the leader of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee. This parcel contained a letter unlike any previously encountered, setting it apart from the Dear Boss letter and the Saucy Jack postcard in both handwriting and style. With a sense of foreboding, Lusk opened the small box accompanying the letter, only to discover a grotesque sight. Half of a human kidney preserved in the spirits of wine. The link to the unfortunate Catherine Eddowes became apparent, as her left kidney had been brutally removed by the relentless killer.
From hell, Mr. Lusk, sir. I sent you half the kidney I took from one woman and preserved it for you. The other piece I fried and ate. It was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out, if you only wait a while longer. Signed, catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk.
The authenticity of the kidney remained a subject of debate, with some asserting it indeed belonged to Eddowes, while others questioned if it was a macabre jest, a grotesque practical joke. Dr. Thomas Openshaw of the London Hospital conducted an examination, confirming that the kidney was human and from the left side, but other biological characteristics remained elusive. Shortly after this disturbing discovery, Dr. Openshaw received a letter bearing the dreaded signature Jack the Ripper.
Old boss, you was right. It was the left kidney I was going to operate again, close to your hospital, just as I was going to draw my knife along her blooming throat. Them cusses of coppers spoiled the game. But I guess I will be on the job soon and will send you another bit of innards. Jack the Ripper. Oh, have you seen the devil with his microscope and scalpel looking at a kidney with a slide cocked up?
The sinister connection between the kidney and the letter only deepened the sense of horror and the realization that the sinister presence behind the Whitechapel murders was still at large. As the fog of terror thickened over Whitechapel, Scotland Yard took a desperate measure to unmask the elusive killer. On the 3rd of October, 1888, they published facsimiles of the notorious Dear Boss letter and the haunting postcard, hoping that a vigilant member of the public might recognise the sinister handwriting. Charles Warren, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, deemed the entire affair a hoax, but acknowledged the obligation to pursue any lead, no matter how futile. However, as days turned into weeks, scepticism grew. On the 7th of October, a scathing article by George R. Sims in the Sunday newspaper Referee suggested that the letters were the cunning creation of a journalist seeking to catapult their newspaper's circulation to unprecedented heights. This insidious notion cast doubt on the authenticity of the letters and the intentions of their author. Intriguingly, police officials later claimed to have identified a specific journalist responsible for both the Dear Boss letter and the postcard. A letter from Chief Inspector John Littlechild to George R. Sims, dated the 23rd of September 1913, pointed to a journalist named Tom Bullen as the suspected author. An astonishing revelation, indeed, but the murky waters of truth continued to churn. In an unexpected twist, a journalist named Fred Best reportedly confessed in 1931 that he and a colleague at the Star had concocted the letters signed Jack the Ripper as a nefarious ploy. Their motive? To keep the business of reporting on the murders thriving, a macabre ploy to heighten public interest. Chapter 5 Investigation. The horrors of the World War II Blitz, a relentless reign of destruction, wiped away the vast majority of their investigative records, leaving behind mere whispers of the terrifying events that once unfolded. Peering through the surviving Metropolitan Police files, we are granted a chilling glimpse into the investigative procedures of the Victorian era. A dedicated team of policemen embarked on relentless house-to-house inquiries throughout the eerie alleys of Whitechapel. Forensic materials were gathered and examined with trembling hands as they pursued leads that might lead them to the elusive Ripper. More than 2,000 people were questioned, with over 300 individuals coming under intense scrutiny and suspicion. As the killer's net tightened, around 80 individuals were apprehended, each one potentially hiding a heart as black as night. In the wake of Stride and Eddowes' gruesome murders, a desperate plea echoed through the cobblestone streets, reverberating from the lips of Sir James Fraser, the Commissioner of the City Police, who offered a princely sum of £500 for the capture of the elusive Ripper. At the heart of the investigation was the tenacious Detective Inspector Edmund Reed, guiding the efforts of the Metropolitan Police Whitechapel. But as the horrors escalated with the death of Nichols, reinforcements arrived from Scotland Yard. With Chapman, Stride and Eddowes falling victim, darkness clouded the path of justice. Desperation fueled the search, and suspicion clung to those whose occupations mirrored the ghastly mutilations. Butchers, slaughterers, surgeons and physicians, their hands steeped in the gore of their trades, found themselves under the gaze of suspicion. Alibis were scrutinised, but the bloody trails seemed to slip through their fingers like smoke. As the autumn of 1888 descended upon London's East End, a gathering of souls came together to confront the terror that plagued their streets. Known as the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, this group of volunteer citizens emerged from the shadows, their resolve firm and their hearts heavy with concern. Fear and frustration stirred within the committee members, fueled by the relentless failure of the police to apprehend the elusive perpetrator behind the heinous Whitechapel murders. The streets, once teeming with life and commerce, were now filled with dread. The dark cloud of death had engulfed the area, and it cast a sinister shadow over local businesses, pushing some to the brink of ruin. With grim determination, the committee took matters into their own hands, embarking on nocturnal patrols through the dimly lit streets, hunting for any trace of the Ripper figure that lurked in the night. Their eyes darted anxiously from shadow to shadow, their hearts pounding with each step they took, knowing they treaded on treacherous ground. Their quest for justice knew no bounds, and they sought support from the government, pleading for a higher reward to incentivize information leading to the apprehension of the killer. Unsatisfied with waiting for help, they pledged their own sum of £50, the equivalent of almost £8,500 today, a fortune in those days, as an additional incentive to entice reluctant informants. The threat of danger loomed large, and the committee realised they could not solely rely on official channels. They employed private detectives, veiled figures of darkness, to venture forth and question witnesses discreetly. Each revelation brought them one step closer to the malevolent heart of the enigma. In the midst of their relentless struggle, they bore the weight of the East End's hopes and fears on their shoulders. In the cold embrace of late October, a chilling request reached the ears of police surgeon Thomas Bond. Robert Anderson, driven by the desperate need to unmask the malevolent hand behind the Whitechapel murders, sought Bond's opinion on the surgical skill and knowledge of the fiend responsible for the ghastly atrocities. Bond's assessment stands as the earliest surviving profile of the enigmatic Whitechapel murders, drawing from his own examination of the most extensive mutilated victim and the haunting post-mortem notes of the previous 4 canonical murders. His words spoke of a darkness that sent shivers down spines. Quote, "All 5 murders, no doubt, were committed by the same hand." End quote. In the first 4 horrific acts, the throats of the victims had been brutally slashed from left to right. Yet, the last victim, her body subjected to extensive mutilation, left no clear path for the fatal cut, a chilling testament to the sheer brutality of the act. As Bond delved deeper into the malevolent psyche of the killer, he vehemently opposed the notion that the murderer possessed any scientific or anatomical knowledge. To him, the fiend was no skilled practitioner of the surgical arts, nor did he bear the technical prowess of a butcher or horse slaughterer. Instead, Bond painted a portrait of a man of solitude, haunted by periodic bouts of homicidal and erotic mania. The beast within the murderer, a relentless drive for sexual gratification, found an outlet in the mutilation of his victims, leaving them displayed in sexually degrading positions, their wounds laid bare for all to witness. Yet, the horrors of this enigma left the minds of experts divided. While some psychologists suppose that the perpetrator derived sick pleasure from the attacks, others vehemently dismiss such hypotheses as unfolded speculation. A relentless battle between light and darkness over the truth hidden within the abyss. As if obscured by a fog of time, the pursuit of the Ripper faces an even darker challenge: the lack of any surviving forensic evidence. Accounts offer contradictions and unreliability, shrouding the truth in a cloak of uncertainty. Even DNA analysis on letters has proven inconclusive, the material too tainted by countless hands to yield any meaningful results. In the darkness of speculation, the names of 2 suspects emerged like phantoms: Aaron Kosminski, a Whitechapel barber, and artist Walter Sickert. Their alleged DNA connections to the case spark fierce debates, yet the scientific methodologies used to support these claims stand accused of being as murky as the crimes themselves. Chapter 6: Suspects. Within the chilling tapestry of the Whitechapel murders, the haunting pattern of killings, clustered around weekends and public holidays, hints at a sinister truth. Many have speculated that the elusive Ripper was no stranger to regular employment, lurking in the shadows of the East End, perhaps dwelling amidst its labyrinthian alleys. Yet, alternative theories arise, casting the fiend in a different light. Some suggest a chilling possibility: an educated upper-class man, possibly a doctor or aristocrat, wandering the streets of Whitechapel, his true identity cloaked in darkness. These unsettling hypotheses draw upon cultural fears of the medical profession, a mistrust of modern science, or cruel exploitation of the impoverished by the affluent elite. The quest to unveil the Ripper's true face birthed the term Ripperology, the tireless study and analysis of the case, aiming to penetrate the veil of mystery. In the shadows, a parade of suspects emerge, woven together by threads of speculation and ambiguity. Over the years, a multitude of names has been proposed, tenuously linked to the case through contemporaneous documents, or sometimes merely invoking famous figures from history, such as Prince Albert Victor, artist Walter Sickert, and author Lewis Carroll. As the world of the living fades into the past, modern authors feel free to accuse anyone, unshackled by the need for supporting historical evidence. Within the haunting theories, agreement among authorities remains elusive. Countless speculations weave a complex tapestry of identities and professions, with over 100 named suspects claiming a fleeting connection to the malevolent Ripper. Despite unwavering fascination within the case, the truth eludes us still. The identity of Jack the Ripper lost in the eternal shadows of history. Chapter 7. Media and Legacy. Although Jack the Ripper was not the first serial killer, his case unleashed a worldwide media hysteria, changing the way future heinous acts were reported. In 1880, school attendance was made compulsory after the Elementary Education Act was introduced, leading to a significant portion of the working class being able to read by 1888, setting the stage for a new era in news distribution. As the Victorian era progressed, mass circulation newspapers and magazines costing just a halfpenny emerged, thrusting characters like the Ripper into the spotlight, providing them with an unprecedented level of publicity. During the height of the investigation, the public became deeply invested, with over 1 million copies of newspapers containing extensive coverage of the Whitechapel murders being sold each day. However, in the pursuit to retain popularity and readership, many papers veered into the realm of speculation, peddling false information as if it were the cold, hard truth. Amidst this frenzy, an undercurrent of prejudice seeped into the narratives, fueled by rumours suggesting the killer might be Jewish or foreign. With the publication of the infamous Dear Boss letter, the name Jack the Ripper was now on everyone's lips. The adoption of a nickname for a killer became standard media practice, with future examples including the Axeman of New Orleans, the Boston Strangler, and the Beltway Sniper. In the wake of Jack the Ripper's story, countless other killers would give themselves the same moniker, such as the French Ripper, the Dusseldorf Ripper, the Camden Ripper, the Blackout Ripper, Jack the Stripper, the Yorkshire Ripper, and the Rostov Ripper. The Ripper murders cast a spotlight on the squalid streets of the East End, bringing public awareness to the impoverished living conditions and crowded slums that plagued the area. The Ripper's killings galvanised public opinion against the wretched state of the East End, and in the decades following the atrocities, efforts were made to clear and demolish the worst of the slums. Yet, some buildings and streets from that dark era still stand, reminding us of the terrors that once lurked in their shadows. The legend of the Ripper endures, woven into the very fabric of the East End's history. Guided tours of the murder sites and other locations connected to the case keep the chilling tale alive. For years, the Ten Bells Public House, a site for one of the canonical Ripper victims, served as a focal point for these tours. Jack the Ripper's fictional persona entered countless realms of creativity. From Sherlock Holmes to Japanese horror, the Ripper's presence loomed large. Hundreds of works of fiction and semi-fictional works explored the realm of the Ripper, from novels and short stories to comic books, games, songs, plays, operas, television programs, and films. The true crime genre also embraced the tale, with over 100 non-fiction works delving into the case. The study of the Ripper case, known as Ripperology, became a fascination for both professionals and amateurs alike. In modern times, the Ripper's notoriety even extended to Poles, with a BBC History magazine poll dubbing him the worst Briton in history in 2006, 118 years after his crimes were committed. In 2015, the Jack the Ripper Museum opened in East London, drawing both criticism and protests. And in 2021, the Ripper's name caused a stir when a Jack the Chipper fish and chip shop opened in Greenwich, with some patrons vowing to boycott the establishment. As we reach the conclusion of our journey through the history of Jack the Ripper, we find ourselves standing at a crossroads of horror and mystery. The tale of this killer, shrouded in darkness and veiled in the mists of time, continues to captivate the collective imagination. Jack the Ripper was not the first serial killer, but his case forever changed the landscape of journalism and true crime reporting. The mystery of the Ripper's identity is a shadowy maze, with countless suspects weaving in and out of the narrative. From local individuals named in documents to famous figures like Prince Albert and Lewis Carroll, the list of names seems never ending. The legend of Jack the Ripper persists, casting its shadow over later serial killers and fueling the imaginations of countless writers, artists, and filmmakers. As we step back into the present, we are left with a sense of unease, a lingering awareness that true horror often lies in the unexplained and unknown. The tale of Jack the Ripper stands as a reminder of the depths of human depravity, and a tale that will continue to resonate with us for centuries to come. Next time on Dark Diaries.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas! Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas! Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!